So I'm joining you here from the track at hobnail, my local track, and this is my first track session back from the London Marathon. It's just under 2 weeks ago now. So the session I'm looking to do today is an 8x800 meter session, which will probably be around 8 by 3 minutes. So it's a session that was probably a staple of my training over the past year or so when I was running well. I'd really like to nail this session, get back to it and have a good confidence boost for my training again. So looking at my training post London Marathon, I was obviously still a little bit stiff and sore from that until I was quite bad on Tuesday. The Wednesday did get back into a little bit more normal training with a few easy runs. And then my first session back was last Saturday. I did, so about 6 days post the marathon, I did an interval session, quite a short interval session, not as long as I'm doing today, and that felt pretty good. I've done a couple of tempo runs since, so 3 to 4 mile tempos, and then this is my sort of 4th interval session back, but the first one I've come down to the track to do. I'm just coming to the end of my warm-up now, which going to the England Athletics principles I'll teach on your coaching courses, to the ramp principles. So this is a raise section of it, so we're raising the heart rate. As you can see, I've got a little bit of a sweat on, but not so much that you're going straight into that session a little bit cold. So the raise part is the first part, so I'll do 1 to 2 mile jog warm-up, and then we'll move into the activation, mobilization and potentiation phase in due course. So the activation stage, you'll see me doing some squats, some lunges, some whole body movements that activate a lot of those muscles that you're going to be using in the track session. So thinking your glutes, hamstrings and calves mainly. And then into the mobilization stage. So thinking things here that mobilize the joints. So they could be things like your leg swings, so lateral and doing forward leg swings and backwards. Also things, a bit of hip mobility is really important. I find your hips, especially on a track session, can get really tight. So thinking things like opening and closing the gates, a few hamstring walkouts as well. So I'll get a few hamstring sweeps in there. And then moving into the potentiation phase. The final stage we'll go to is a potentiation phase. So this is the final stage that's just before you start your session. So you will have hopefully raised your heart rate, activated and mobilized your muscles and your joints. And then this is where you'll do some sort of plyometric, maybe throw some strides in at the end. So I'll do some good examples in this video of what you can do just before you then go and hit that track session or tempo workout. So you can see I'm doing some strides here. Strides are really important just to do before your sessions. So the idea of doing your strides is that you've got around 10 to 15 seconds that you can work in your lactic system. So you're working and it's not sort of tiring out all your muscles. You've got up to 15 seconds that you can put in a good sort of controlled 90% effort that won't then hinder you going into your run. It's a really good chance to get that form kicked in, and you'll probably be working at slightly under that stride pace that you go for. So really important to put in there right before you then go into your workout. That's the warm-up done now, so I'm going to roll straight into the session. So I've got a target pace in mind of around 6 minutes per mile pace, which is 90 seconds per lap. Works out the maths quite well on the 400s. So if I can split in 90 and get back in 3 minutes, then I'm right on track. There might be a bit of a discrepancy between what my watch GPS is saying and what the track is, but I would tend to try and go off what the track pace is. Again, this is only a rough guide, so if I'm not really feeling it and not feeling up to it, then it's no big deal if I'm sort of 6:15, 6:30 pace and lapping in like over 90s. I'm just going to see how my body feels. It's more important to have a good consistent timing through the reps than get to about 5 or 6 reps and then miss out on the last 2 being quality reps because I've gone out too quick in the session. So that's the first rep done. I did hit around 6-minute mile pace for that one. But talking about the recoveries, so I went in with the idea of having 60 seconds static recovery, which at this level of fitness is probably asking a little bit too much. So I'd rather extend this to 90 seconds for today and then start cutting it down in later weeks when I get a bit fitter to 60 seconds. That's the third rep done now. It's starting to feel a little bit more difficult, so I'm still keeping just onto that 3-minute pace for the 800 meters, but it is starting to get a little bit harder now. So quite thankful of doing that 90 seconds rest rather than trying to go off 60, because I think 4 or 5 reps in, I would have been burnt out by now. That's the 5th rep done now. I really like that point where I've done 5 out of 8. I'm just over halfway in the session. You can really concentrate on just finishing off those last 3 reps. That's the session done now, so really happy with that 8x800 sessions. Looking at some of the paces, I was hitting that 3-minute mark. I think the slowest split was 3:03 for the 800s, so I'll really take that from where I am at the moment, just after the marathon, and getting back into a bit of fitness. So the next sessions, I'll look at trying to progress this. So there are a few different ways of progressing this session. I can make the recovery shorter, so I was taking 90 seconds recovery. I could get these closer down towards the 60 seconds to make it a more difficult session. The other way is to try and up the paces. I could try and work down to getting those 800s in sort of the 250 region and hitting that for all 8 of them as I get fitter. Or the other one is to add a little bit more volume on, which if I'm training for more like marathon, half marathon sort of distance, then it would be beneficial to hit maybe 10, 12 of these. But at the moment, if I'm focusing on trying to improve my speed, I want to be running them probably quicker, and with shorter recoveries will be more beneficial to try to bring my 5k and 10k time down. So where does that leave my training from here? So what I'd like to do is to get a bit more consistency back into my training, because building on consistent weeks, be that mileage and getting those sessions in, really gets you fit and make sure that I get back to the sort of paces that I was running for the races well over a year ago when I was at my fittest. So the plan here is just to keep that consistency, keep it manageable, try and hit around that 50 to 60 mile a week mark, which was the sweet spot that I found when I was training well alongside work, and then maybe progress it even a bit more from there, but that's still probably 2 or 3 months down the line, as my main goal towards the end of the year is to get a good time at the Valencia Marathon in December. So I'll be working towards getting my paces down for the shorter distances over the summer if I can do, but I do really enjoy the marathon training, so I'll keep it with that marathon focus, but try and get some of those, a varied approach of different sessions, be intervals, tempos, and a little bit of hill work sprinkled in there as well.